Everyone, so this is Rebecca with Red True Crime, and I said I was going to do these profiles on gangsters and mobsters and other different aspects of history and crime and whatnot. So today I'm going to talk about Frank Lucas. So those of you who don't know who he is a drug kingpin that came out of Harlem, New York. You know, he was known as, oh God, what's the best? The American Gangster, because he came up through the ranks under Bumpy Johnson, and he's been memorialized on film by Denzel Washington, who portrayed him in the movie American Gangster in 2006. So if you didn't know about him before that point, and if you've never seen the movie or heard of it, you're going to hear about him today. Turn my car off. Trying to combine some things today. So we're going to go over his little profile, and then I'm going to have some excerpts of a live interview he did with a documentarian several years ago, and because he is now deceased, but it does bring up the conjecture, because he talked a lot of tomfoolery is the best way I could describe it. And I've mentioned his name to some people I know, and I was informed that the black community really wasn't about Frank Lucas. They were about some other men that I will do videos on later on down the road. But right now, I'm prepared for Frank Lucas, so that's what you're going to hear about today. So those of you who are new to the channel, thank you for checking me out. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit subscribe, share, like, comment, all that good stuff. I don't just talk about gangsters, I talk about other crimes. I just got done covering Amber Shelton was a missing woman here in Greensboro. Marissa Carmichael, another missing woman. I did a historical piece on Charles Lindbergh. So, you know, we got a few different things we can talk about on here, and just check them all out. There's about 180 videos on the channel, and more the merrier, right? So one thing about Frank Lucas, and a lot of people didn't know this, and I picked up on this when I heard his interview that he gave to that documentarian, but he's actually from North Carolina, which I did not know that until I was researching him. So he grew up, let's see, let me get to my notes here. He's from LaGrange, North Carolina. And he was born in 33, but let me double check that here. Humble beginning, yeah, 1930. So born September 9th, 1930 in LaGrange, North Carolina. Life wasn't easy for him. You know, there was a lot of poverty, a lot of racism, a lot of violence. And these are things that in southern United States, in the southern states especially, like, you know, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, these kind of places, racism was still rampant, and the Klan was still running around doing things. So these are all things he grew up around. These are all things that shaped him into the person he ended up being down the road. So, you know, he talks about how he had a cousin who was killed by the Klan. And now, of course, this has never been proven, but at the same time, though, even if records were kept, I don't know if it would have been proven, because you had a history of law enforcement being involved with the Klan at that time. So you know, the police were just as dangerous as a Klan at that time. And because of that, it gave him a different perspective on law and order, on what was right. So he started his life off at just doing petty crime just to help, you know, feed his family. You know?
Monitor that for me too. Thank you. Okay, here we go, Frank.
Okay, whenever you get ready. I don't think Mike ready yet.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, just to get things started off, tell me a little bit about your youth in North Carolina growing up. You know, tell me about where you came from. You know, actually, I'm sorry. First, right off the bat, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, your name, you know, anything about you, your age, where you live, you know, where we
I'm not going to tell you where I live.
You know,
I'm not going to put it on.
that's fine. I'm just, you know, I'm just general information. I'm just trying to, you know, warm you up.
Okay. I'm already one. We can go over the question if you want to.
Okay, what's your name? You know,
Frank Lucas.
Can you say my name is Frank Lucas?
My name is Frank Lucas, and I live in I live on the Eastern Seaboard.
Well, can you just, from the top real quick, without me talking, just say, I am Frank Lucas.
Okay, I am Frank Lucas, and I live on the Eastern Seaboard of the United States.
Very good. Thank you, Frank. Can you tell me a little bit about your youth, you know, where you grew up and how?
I grew up in rural North Carolina back in the 30s. The reason I'm the man I am today, I guess, is because I saw something that ain't no 3-year-old, 6-year-old kids should see when he's a 6-year-old. I saw them come to my house and come to our house, and my daddy wasn't home. My mother was there and shoot and murder my cousin. He's 15 years old. And you know what they murdered him for? They murdered him for wrecked his eyeball.
You know, he was one of many kids, and you know, his dad was gone, so he did what he could. When he was about 14 years old, he got into a situation where he stole from a trucking company he was working for, and the owner of the company came after him because Frank was sleeping with his daughter, so that was a problem. So he took off from North Carolina and ran all the way up to New York, Harlem specifically. And he was kind of, you know, doing some petty crime, you know, breaking into things, stealing things, but whatever he had been doing, he got the eye of Bumpy Johnson. Now, Bumpy Johnson was another Harlem gangster that had been around since the times of Lucky Luciano, Dutch Schultz, these type of people who were running New York crime. And he handled Harlem, the Italians handled everywhere else. So they kind of worked in a little symbiotic relationship here, but you know, they kept to their territories. Now, Frank Lucas built his way up, you know, to be under Bumpy, to be like basically the right-hand man to Bumpy. And when Bumpy passed away, Frank Lucas took over his empire. And the first thing he did was to cut out the Italian mob from the heroin business. So he had devised a way to basically import it directly from Southeast Asia. So he had pure product coming in that was less cut, and he was able to sell it at a cheaper rate. So he pretty much put the Italians out of business. So, and yeah, but this all happened. Bumpy died in 1968, so Frank took over right after that. And this is also during the time of Vietnam, so they were able to get product out of Asia into the United States pretty easily through military convoys and whatnot. So, you know, he was getting it straight from the Asia's Golden Triangle, and all during the war. And his heroin, they called it Blue Magic because it was cheap, and it was flooding the streets, making him millions of dollars. And he just wasn't rich. He was wealthy. He had mansions, mink coats. He was very opulent. He was very ostentatious with his manner. And, you know, he lived like a king. So there's this one picture that people keep showing of him. It's him in a chinchilla coat. So that will also pop up in this video. You'll see that. In fact, I'll go ahead and put it up here right now. But, and that coat, that's kind of where the trouble started with him, because he starts walking around in this $100,000 chinchilla coat. And that's when the DEA picked up on him. So they're like, okay, where did he get that coat? How is he able to afford all this? And they started surveilling him. So Richie Roberts, who I guess was the DEA agent that busted him, made it his mission to bust him. And, you know, had a lot of wiretaps, followed him a lot. And it's weird because Richie and Frank Lucas became friends. And Richie's actually the godfather of Frank Lucas's youngest kid. So in 1975, Frank Lucas was arrested and charged with drug trafficking. And then facing 70 years in prison, he did the one thing no one expected, and he cooperated. He testified against corrupt cops, fellow traffickers, taking down more than 100 people. So he really put himself in a world of hurt and danger, because even on this documentary interview that he gave, he made it very clear that they cannot take footage around him. He would not say where he was, where he was sitting, and this is like a couple years before he died that this was taken, and he was just like, no, I'm not dying today. I mean, the man lived to a ripe old age. So he cooperated, and he basically became mud at this point, because nobody would trust him, because he snitched on so many people. And he did serve a little bit of time, and he lived a very quiet life and remained legendary thanks in part to the movie American Gangster. So American Gangster really brought him to the forefront of people who had heard about him but did not know who he was. So that really brought him forward, that movie, especially having Denzel play you. That definitely makes something a little bit more memorable. So he was a brilliant businessman. He was a cold-blooded criminal. But was he both? That's the question. And then there's also a tie from Frank Lucas into Sean Diddy Combs. Now, one of the main reasons why I wanted to cover Frank Lucas. Melvin Combs was also a drug trafficker. This is Sean Diddy Combs' father. And he worked under Frank Lucas. Now, Frank Lucas, and this is kind of picked up a bit in the interview when you watch it, that he did with the documentary filmmaker, that he was extremely paranoid. Extremely. And it is said that he is the reason that Melvin Combs is no longer alive. That Melvin Combs was, going to give him up to the police, and Frank had him killed. Now, here's my thing. Cops are already onto your butt. So, I don't know how much more Melvin Combs could have taken you down, but he supposedly had him killed. And it's also said that Frank Lucas was involved in Sean, P. Diddy Combs' life as he was growing up. Like, he had him over to his house because Puffy and Frank Lucas had a daughter. They were about the same age, so they would play. But it does make you wonder what all Sean Diddy Combs saw growing up, because, he was growing up knowing that his father had died in a car accident. That's what he was told. And then he finds out the truth, that he was this ruthless gangster, drug dealer who did all these things, and he became obsessed with being like his father. I mean, they said that he wanted to be a gangster like his dad. And I think he's accomplished that. If even an eighth of what they're saying about him is true in the indictments and the rumor and the speculation, the parties and everything, he was literally trying to be a Frank Lucas, a great Gatsby, be it, with the freak-off parties and everything else. Just this over-the-top personality that has now gotten him into a lot of freaking trouble. And I gotta believe he thought this was a cool thing to do. Trying to follow in his father's footsteps. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see what happens with all of this with Sean Puffy Combs. But like I said, the interview, the full interview on YouTube is like an hour and a half long, and I'm not going to put an hour and a half interview in this. But I'm going to take some pieces and throw that in here as well, and you'll see that. But one thing about that interview that bothered me was I didn't like how the filmmaker was talking to him. He was kind of rude. He was kind of pushy. And it was obvious this guy didn't want to talk about certain things. And I guess as an interviewer, you try to get your subject to give you what you need. So you can make your piece. You can make your project. So be it. And that was one thing he was doing. He was just very, very pushy, and I didn't like how that was coming across. So, other than that, that is all I have on Frank Lucas. So, let me know. Drop me a comment or whatever and give me an idea of another mobster you'd like to hear about. I'm not sure who I'm doing after Frank Lucas, but there's going to be more. And other than that, subscribe, share, like, comment. Do these things. It's all free. It doesn't cost anything. And it really helps the algorithm out there with putting out information, especially about the missing people cases that I cover. Because unfortunately with Amber Shelton, that case has temporarily come to a close because she has been found. She was unalived. And they're saying it's a self-unalive. The police are, but nobody believes that, including myself. And I have multiple videos showing the surrounding area where she was found. And I have done a couple videos talking at length who I think is responsible. So check those out too. But anyway, Mobster Monday, everybody. Woo! Frank Lucas, yay. I already did one on, who was the other one? Oh yeah, George Remus was the first one I did. Yeah, real guy. People thought he was just a fictional character in Boardwalk Empire. No, real legit dude. So, anyway, I'm going to hop off here. Be weird, be rude, be safe. As I always say, if you're weird and rude, they won't come get you and all that other good stuff. And keep your head on a swivel. You never know who's following you. Bye.
Did you know? Who did you know coming up to New York City? Did you know anyone?
Nobody. I know nobody.
And you just came to Harlem?
Just came to Harlem.
All right, so what was the process? What happened when you got to Harlem?
Well, I didn't have no money. Not a dime, not a penny in my pocket. So I did what all the full-blood American kids would do, started robbing. We started robbing, taking money, snatching money out of them right of hand and shit like that, and hitting them upside the head with a rock, a stick, a ball bat, whatever I had. And when I got a gun, it got a lot easier for me then,
What was your first gun?
Excuse me?
Do you remember what kind your first gun was?
My first gun, old Rush 38, I think it was.
6-shooter?
6-shooter, yeah. 6-shooter, yeah.
So
I didn't know no better, because I would have shot somebody that told me no. I would have shot, I didn't know no better.
So who did you get to know? Who became your friends?
Well, I used to sleep they had back then in New York, they had when you live with coal for the winter, they put coal in the basement. I one of them shoots. I used to sleep in the basement in the cold then for a while until I got some money. Then I started living big time.
So how did you get money?
I just told you, robbing.
So that's how you got real money?
Yeah, that's why I got real money, robbing.
Once you got
a few months later, I robbed Bush's Jewelry.
What was that?
Bush Jewelry.
Oh.
I robbed them. I got 2 trays of diamonds. I told the guy I was gonna get married. I had on look pretty good that day. When I told him I was gonna get married and stuff like that. And I told them they wasn't big enough. Bring me some real stuff out there. I had a flash bankroll. What a flash bankroll is? $3 or $4 on each side, $100 bill on the other side, and a newspaper in between. So he thought I written them money. I went in there and I snatched it and put it in my bag. And the guy at the door was gonna block me. I popped him in the head, in the face, and kept on going. I got $30,000 for that.
Wow.
Back then.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Oh, dang, that was a lot of money. Bought 2 Cadillacs. Yes, I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
So who did you